What is up, true believers? The eternal truth. The eternal truth. The eternal truth. The eternal truth behind our modern mythology.
What is up, true believers? It's Mason here with Comics and Crosses, where we discuss the eternal truths behind our modern mythology. And today is Friday, January 21st, 2022. And I hope you guys had a good week. I hope that I felt like there was a lot of good comics that came out this week. I know I had a big haul myself. I'm barely been able to dig into it so far. But also I had a lot of books that were left over from last week. My indies have been coming in late from Diamond, and maybe you've experienced the same thing. So let's see. Latest goings on. Let's talk about latest comic news or comic adjacent news, maybe. This one, the singer actor Meatloaf has passed away. I just thought I'd mention it. Honestly, I don't know much about Meatloaf. I believe I once saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was an experience in and of itself, and he was in it. That is about as far as my Meatloaf knowledge goes. So if you're a big Meatloaf fan, you can let us know in the comments how you feel. But God bless him and his family. Hope that they're doing okay through this tough time. Another note is that so the Batman, the movie, The Batman, coming out next month or in March. They just released the runtime on the Batman, and it's 2 hours and 55 minutes. That is going to be the longest Batman movie to date. I got to be honest with you, from the stuff I'd seen of the Batman movie, I was not as excited about it as I was about The Dark Knight or any of those other ones. I haven't been completely sold on it yet, but the idea that it's going to be 2 hours and 55 minutes does put a smile on my face. I am a big Batman fan. He's probably my number one comic book character, and I'm interested to see what they do. I mean, this is going to be a long, but I'm concerned about how dreary and dark it kind of looks. Like sometimes, they make things really heavy with Batman, and that's not always the answer. But also, it kind of didn't feel heavy in a cool, dark sort of Arkham Asylum video game sort of way. It almost feels heavy, dark, like a 90s like metal kind of way, like like a Marilyn Manson. I think they play Kurt Cobain music in one of the trailers. So what's up to Sergio from House of Nerd popping in? Thanks for stopping by, buddy. So anyway, Bruce Wayne, Robert Pattinson looks scrawny in my opinion. Now, I haven't seen him with his shirt off exactly, so maybe and I heard new rumors that he claimed that bulking up for the role of Batman was not important, which, I mean, I don't know, maybe he's more like a lean ninja type, but he just looks like a gangly, sickly looking kind of pale guy. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I think, what's her name? Zoe Kravitz looks great as Selena Kyle. And the latest trailer has some dope action scenes that just look really, really cool. So we'll see how that one comes along. Also, for any fans of Mad Cave's Nottingham, Volume 2 is coming out, so they're continuing the series. issue 6, the new arc, will be out in April. So that's pretty exciting. That was a really good indie title. If you don't know about that one, that is a retelling of Robin Hood. Robin Hood, Nottingham, the whole rob from the rich, give to the poor, but a pretty violent, brutal kind of one, but really cool, stylized, from Mad Cave Studios. So be looking for that one to come out. Let's see, anything else that was worth mentioning? That might be it for now. But anyway, hope everybody had a great week. Hope you got some good comics. I got a sweet haul. Check out my Instagram or maybe even my Twitter to see the stuff I picked up this week. As always, lots of mention of God, lots of talk on just kind of those big principles. We only find them when they're dead. The first issue number 1 of this series was the first book I ever reviewed on my channel, and the story continues from Al Ewing with really kind of crazy, vivid art. I will say that the art sometimes, and maybe even the paneling, makes it a little difficult to follow the action, to tell what's happening. But it's certainly a stylized choice, the way they do the art. So if you haven't started reading that one now, it's probably too late, unless you pick up the trades. But read the description. I thought it was a great premise. And there's some really interesting talk in there about, the story really lends itself to themes about religion, about worship, about deifying people and things and ideas. So it's pretty fascinating. It'll be interesting to see where this series goes. It's very slow moving. So this is the second arc that's probably going to be wrapping up soon, the next 1 or 2 issues. And like the first arc, it's taking forever for basically to go from point A to point B, but it's still kind of interesting. So that one's a tough one. I don't know that everybody could hang with it, in my honest opinion. So excuse me a second. So I did get to read a couple of things from my comic book haul this week. That's one that I started digging into. We only find them when they're dead. Also, there were a couple of books starring Ben Reilly as Spider-Man. So for anybody who might not happen to know, Peter Parker is obviously our long-standing Spider-Man, has been since the 60s. But there was a storyline in the 90s where there was a clone saga, and Peter Parker had been cloned, Spider-Man had been cloned, so there were these other versions of Spider-Man around, including Ben Reilly, who was at the time the Scarlet Spider-Man. So he had his red costume, and he was a little bit different, but had the same abilities as Peter Parker. And so in The Amazing Spider-Man recently, he has come back, and in Peter Parker's absence due to injury, Ben Reilly Spider-Man has been occupying the mantle of Spider-Man, has been saving people and doing the whole bit, although Ben Reilly Spider-Man is in a different kind of situation because he's backed by the Beyond Corporation. So what is up, Lost in Comics? We got my buddy Chris in the house from Lost in Comics, another great comic book show to check out. So so like I said, we're talking about Ben Reilly Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, and which one is better, which may seem like an obvious question. Peter Parker obviously is the original. It's kind of like, is anybody going to be a better Batman than Bruce Wayne? Probably not. But this Spider-Man, this Ben Reilly Spider-Man, has been around since the 90s, and he has some of his own history that's really starting to get a little richer. Especially with this new series that's come out that is telling some of the adventures or things that he's gone on, and kind of giving us another window closer into his psyche. And speaking of his psyche, the other book with him that came out this week was Amazing Spider-Man 86. Now, this is a really cool cover. So much so that my 4-year-old was like, "What's happening to Spider-Man?" My wife, who doesn't read comics, was like, "Wow, that's a really cool cover." Um, and she even you can see on my Instagram that she played a joke on me saying she wanted to read it. But the funny thing behind that is she really was interested to read this book because of the cover. So covers sell comics, and you can see here if you haven't seen it already, look it up. Spider-Man 86 has this really like compelling image of Spider-Man, struggling mentally, covered in spiders, and it's just really a visceral visual representation of the mental anguish that he's in. Um, and that's kind of something that made me think about this subject um, because this Ben Reilly Spider-Man, here's the deal. He was a clone of Peter Parker. He was a clone of Spider-Man, and so was wrestling. That's a strange place to be in. I am not a I'm like not a real person. I'm a copy of a real person, but yet I am a person. And what makes it even more complicated is after spending years on his own, he found out that he was not a clone. He was the actual Peter Parker. And the Peter Parker that we all know is a clone of his. So who's on first? What's on second? I don't know. Is on third, but that's the situation. Uh, and um, and here's the thing. Here's why I want to call into question who's the better Spider-Man. And I'm talking very much like present right now. Obviously, Peter Parker's got the most history, but think about this, what I'm describing now of Ben, of dealing with the questions of his identity, of who he is. Of he's in a situation right now where he's being potentially used, manipulated by his bosses, by this corporation that backs him and funds him, supports him as Spider-Man, as the official Spider-Man. He's in some complicated situations. And I feel as if with Peter Parker, where he's at currently in comics, is he's not that teenage kid that we can all relate to anymore. He's not that young kid just trying to be understood and accepted and dealing with these big problems and responsibilities because of the great power that's been bestowed upon him. Lately, Peter feels like just a guy who goes from fighting one villain to the next. Now, while those are big challenges, fighting the Green Goblin and other things like this, um, let me ask you, can you relate more to a hero who is fighting larger than life supervillains or somebody who struggles with the anguish of who he really is, of where his value really lies? Do you relate to somebody who questions um, and has to work on their mental health in order to stay assured of their place in the world? Um, Ben Reilly's journey right now is very compelling, and that's playing out in Amazing Spider-Man, and now in his own series as well, the Ben Reilly Spider-Man that just kicked off this week. Although it's telling some past stories. So what I'm finding is that we naturally want to root for somebody who is fighting for something, is contending for something. And while Spider-Man will always do that, while Batman will always do that, it's become a really interesting path and actually a surprisingly relatable path, especially as mental health becomes such a big issue. I've talked about it multiple times on my channel. That mental health is so important, and I think the amount of anxiety and depression that people are working through in this day and age is tremendous, in large part due to the amount of technology that we are connected to and consuming, the rate at which we are getting exposed to things. It's funny, but I would almost say that Ben Reilly feels like the Spider-Man for right now, where the world is at right now. And I'm kind of enjoying Peter being on the sidelines for a minute. I think now it does sound like they're going to do some different things with Peter. They're restarting the Amazing Spider-Man series, going to start a new volume after this whole Beyond arc storyline ends, and it sounds like they're going to shake some things up with Peter, and he's going to do something wrong or something. I don't know. We'll see, but it could be interesting from there. Let's see. Lost in Comics says, you're spot on. I've been saying this during the whole Beyond arc. It's very compelling and fresh. It is. And it's kind of got a bit of that, corporations trying to do something, but they have ulterior motives. That's pretty predictable, and you can kind of expect, corporations are never going to be framed in a good light. But his personal journey through that is interesting. He's trying to prove that he is his own hero, and you know what? I think he's succeeding at it. I think he really is. I think that this whole scenario and backdrop is pushing him to go beyond the limitations that people have tried to put on him, that he puts on himself. And that is I think we're all rooting for Ben Reilly Spider-Man to come out of this better, stronger, more fully realized hero, one that can use his pain and take it somewhere good. There's I think to still have hope for a character, to believe that there's more that a character can accomplish, is very important to a comic book character. I think it's important to a character that we're rooting for, that we're following, because Spider-Man's appeal kind of has become, I feel like over time, that he's a punching bag. And while that can be interesting, and while we are invested in Peter Parker and we all love him and want to see him succeed, basically, I think what we're offered a lot of times is, here's Peter Parker, the punching bag. It's like, oh man, but without that element of hope, what are we really hoping for with Peter Parker? I mean, maybe hoping that they'd retcon one more day and let him get back with MJ. But with Ben, though, we really haven't seen the full development of who he is as a character, and so we're hoping that he is able to take his lemons and make lemonade. We're hoping to see that he becomes something better, that he overcomes his sort of oppressors. Whereas, Peter we don't feel like he has oppressors. We feel like he has villains that he has actually outmatched and defeated many times, frankly. Whereas for Ben, we're rooting for him. We're excited for him when he beats Doc Ock. Like, that's a big deal. Like, I defeated Doc Ock. Like, me on my own. Like, I did that. I have that accomplished. I have that feather in my hat, and it feels like his hat isn't full of feathers already. So it's a big deal. So I'm liking where we're at. I hope that if you haven't been digging into Amazing Spider-Man, I know that I was out for most of the Nick Spencer run. I just couldn't get into it. This has been a great place to come back in. This has been a great place to really look at the Spider-Man character through this lens of a different Spider-Man. So I hope you're enjoying it, and I think that there, as far as biblical themes and things that are really eternal that are drawing us to this story, I think that plight of somebody, obviously we love to see somebody work to ascend, kind of work through their wilderness to try to get to a promised land of sorts. And I think that comic book characters, there's never going to be they ascended the mountain and they're done. These stories go on and on, but we're catching Ben on the way up, and I think that's really profound. His ascension into the promised land. I think that I know that one of the major Bible verses that always rings out in my head that I tell myself every day is that God works everything together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so we see Ben being controlled, manipulated, even having his memories erased so that he can be used like a asset by a major corporation. And we see him wanting to defeat Doc Ock. We see him wanting to be the Spider-Man, to be worthy of the mantle that he's carrying, and just believing that he can really do it, believing that he can rise, that all of this adversity is going to work for his good, and Lord willing, it will. I feel bad after that last issue, though. Oh yeah, Beyond, man. Yeah, that's brutal. It's tough, but it's tough in a good way, because it makes it was hard caring about the character. It's hard to see him being taken advantage of in that way, manipulated, and it makes you, though, really, I think, if you can sincerely wonder in your heart, is this character going to be okay? Is he going to make it through this? I think that's some great storytelling. I think that's what we sometimes, I feel like, we lack with Peter Parker is he really in danger at all? Like, is anything really going to happen to Peter? But I also think we got a little bit of that in this storyline too. We got him getting injured early on, that kind of leading to him blessing Ben to take on the mantle of Spider-Man, to be Spider-Man out there while Peter's recovering. So there's some different things at play here, but all in all, it's been a fun ride so far. I hope that a lot of people are enjoying the Spider-Man adventure that's happening right now, and I hope that if you haven't, I really recommend going and checking it out, seeing how Ben Reilly does as Spider-Man. There's a lot to root for there. And maybe Peter Parker's still your favorite. Maybe you're like, I don't care. Ben's just a flash in the pan. He's going to go away again and be forgotten about. Maybe he will. Let me know if that's how you feel. Feel free to hit up our comment section and that sort of thing. So that's my talk for today on Ben Reilly and Peter Parker Spider-Man. The differences, kind of what's happening right now in the Spider-Man world. It's a lot of fun. I hope you're enjoying it. Let me know how you feel about it. But this has been the Comics and Crosses Morning Show. We are maybe just a fun time to reflect on these great stories and great artwork and great comic books in the morning to get you going. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. Central. And you can find out more, follow me and everything, Linktree, all that at comicsandcrosses.com. Oh, wait, I got to move this banner here. Let's see. Anyway. Sorry, guys. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. Central. Check out the Comics and Crosses Morning Show. I hope you all have an awesome, blessed weekend. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks, Sergio from House of Nerd, for dropping by today too. And hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday, and we'll talk about all the great stuff we read this